This podcast is sponsored by TradersBaba.com, where AI meets trading education and community. Welcome back, everybody. Ready for another deep dive into the markets?
Always ready. Let's go.
All right. Today we're looking at stocks, currencies, crypto, and commodities. You know, the usual suspects. But first, U.S. stocks.
Seems like things are a bit shaky today.
Yeah, a bit hesitant, I'd say. Earnings season always throws a wrench in things.
Right, investors trying to figure out what all these reports really mean. I'm seeing a lot of red on the Dow. Not exactly a surprise, though, is it?
Not really. It's pretty typical behavior, actually, especially with the elections coming up.
Makes sense, pre-election jitters and all that. But the Nasdaq is actually up today, so tech seems to be feeling pretty good. Why is that?
Well, we had some big tech companies, names like NVIDIA and AMD, reporting strong earnings. Shows you how, even with everything else going on, a good sector can really hold its own.
So, a bit of optimism for the tech folks out there. What about Asian markets? What's the picture there? A little different story over there. Japan's Nikkei 225 is up, and Australia's doing all right, too. Those recent elections in Japan are definitely having an impact.
Oh, yeah, the yen's probably feeling that. Global events, always making things interesting. Okay, enough about stocks for now. Let's talk currencies. Some serious volatility out there, especially with the British pound.
Yeah, the pound's at a 2-month low against the dollar. Upcoming UK budget announcements are making people nervous. Plus, the US dollar is just super strong right now.
It's like everyone's rushing to the dollar for safety. I mean,
Yeah.
US dollar index is staying strong, right?
Absolutely. When things get uncertain globally, investors often look for the safest bet. Right now, that's the US dollar.
Makes sense. All right, time to jump into the wild world of crypto. Bitcoin is on a tear today, hit a 7-day high. What's driving that?
Could be tied to the elections, actually. Some investors see Bitcoin as a hedge against volatility, kind of a safe haven in its own way.
Huh, digital safe haven. Fascinating. But Solana's down today. Should we be worried?
I wouldn't say worried. The number of people using Solana is still growing. Had a great run. Might just be taking a break.
Hopefully just a breather. But there's some drama brewing with Tether. Rumors about an investigation. What's going on there?
Ah, yes, Tether's been pushing back against those allegations, but it definitely highlights the increasing scrutiny on stablecoins. The whole crypto world is still evolving. Lots of questions still out there.
Definitely a space to keep an eye on. Speaking of keeping an eye on things, gold is having a moment. Hit an all-time high.
No surprise there. Gold is the classic safe haven, especially with all the geopolitical tension and the U.S. election coming up.
If it's shiny, it must be valuable, right?
Oh.
Okay, what about oil? WTI is down a bit today after that recent spike. What's going on there?
Well, OPEC cut production recently. That's a big factor. And then, of course, the U.S. election is looming, could have a big impact on energy policy.
Always something, right? Speaking of unexpected things, U.S. soybeans have been down lately.
Interesting one. Goes to show how broad the commodity market is. We forget sometimes that agricultural commodities are essential.
Right, soybeans might not be as exciting as gold, but they're super important. So why the decline?
Honestly, commodities are influenced by so many things. Politics, weather, even consumer demand. It's a puzzle with a million pieces.
And the pieces are always changing. It's what makes it also fascinating.
Absolutely. The more we understand how these things connect, the better we can navigate the markets.
Very true. So we've covered a lot. Stocks, currencies, crypto, commodities. What's the big takeaway for our listeners today?
I'd say pay attention to the big picture. Global events, how investors are feeling, all the economic data coming out, it all matters. Do your research and you'll be in good shape.
Knowledge is power.
Yeah.
All right, let's dig a little deeper into these currencies.
The US dollar is definitely the star of the show right now.
Yeah, you mentioned it earlier, all that strength really impacting everything. What makes it so appealing to investors? It's not just the safe haven thing, is it?
Well, that's part of it for sure, all the global uncertainty and all that. But the U.S. economy is doing pretty well, too. That attracts investors, which pushes up demand for the dollar.
So a strong economy leads to a strong dollar, which leads to an even stronger economy. Bit of a cycle there.
Exactly. But it makes things tricky for other currencies, the euro and the yen.
Yeah, when the dollar goes up, others tend to go down, right? We talked about the pound earlier, but what about the euro?
The euro's been feeling the pressure, too. A weaker euro can help with exports, makes them cheaper, but it also makes imports more expensive.
Tough spot to be in. And central banks are trying to manage all of this, right? Speaking of central banks, what's the latest with the Bank of Japan?
Oh, they've got a lot on their plate. Remember those elections in Japan? Well, the new government's talking about changing things up, maybe some new monetary policies. Traders are a little on edge about it.
So the yen's caught in the middle of all that. It's a bit of a currency tug of war out there, isn't it?
Perfect way to put it. And don't forget about the Australian dollar. It's been fairly stable compared to some others, but it's still sensitive to those commodity prices.
Right. Australia's a big exporter, so they feel it when the global economy wobbles. Okay, I think we've covered currencies pretty well. Back to the crypto world. What else is catching your eye there?
Besides the whole Tether situation, which we'll have to keep following, I'm really interested in this whole DeFi thing.
DeFi, that's a whole other world. But for those who might not know, what exactly is DeFi?
Basically, it's using blockchain to recreate things like lending and borrowing, but without the banks. A more open financial system.
A financial revolution powered by blockchain. Sounds exciting, but also a little scary. Where does Solana fit into all of this? You mentioned earlier that it's still popular despite the price drops.
Solana's trying to be the fast one, you know. It can handle tons of transactions per second, which makes it perfect for DeFi.
Ah, so it's the speed demon of crypto. No wonder it's getting attention. But are the regulators catching up with all this DeFi innovation?
Oh, they're definitely taking notice. They're worried about risks, you know, money laundering, scams, that sort of thing. But they also see the potential, so they're trying to find that balance.
It's always about balance, isn't it?
Yeah.
Encourage innovation, but keep things safe. Kind of a theme today with all these markets.
Absolutely. The world's changing fast, and finance is changing right along with it. Technology's shaking things up, and regulators are trying to keep up.
It's a wild ride, for sure. All right, back to something a bit more down to earth. We talked about gold's record high, but what about other commodities?
Well, oil's always a hot topic. That recent spike was due to a few things, those OPEC production cuts, and geopolitical tensions are always a factor. You know, things in the Middle East can really impact oil prices.
And of course, the big one, the U.S. election. How do you think that will play out for energy and commodity prices?
That's the million-dollar question. It could have a huge impact on energy policy, everything from oil production to renewable energy. I'll have to wait and see what happens.
Seems like everything comes back to the U.S. election these days. It's the big unknown, but with uncertainty comes opportunity, right?
Exactly. If you're prepared and know what you're doing, you can find opportunities even when things are volatile.
Good advice. Okay, one more commodity before we move on. U.S. soybeans. I'm curious about this one because it seems like agricultural commodities don't get enough attention.
Absolutely, they're essential. Soybeans are a huge global crop used in so many things: food, animal feed, even biofuels. If soybean production drops, everyone feels it.
So even a small change can have a big ripple effect. It all comes back to that interconnectedness we were talking about.
Precisely. It's what makes these markets so complex. One little event can have consequences you'd never expect. It's a constant game of chess.
And you have to be thinking several moves ahead. It's what makes it all so interesting, though, right?
Definitely. We're trying to make sense of this crazy world one deep dive at a time.
Well said.
Yeah.
All right, we've covered a lot today. Stocks, currencies, crypto, commodities. We've seen a lot of actions, some expected, some surprising.
And it's all constantly changing. That's why it's so important to stay up to date, be ready to adapt, and never stop learning.
Words to live by for any trader. But before we wrap up, I want to leave our listeners with one final thought.
The world is full of uncertainty, that's for sure. But it's also full of opportunities. Stay informed, stay curious, and you can achieve anything.
Couldn't have said it better myself. Okay, folks, that's all the time we have for today. We've had a blast exploring these markets with you, and we hope you learned a thing or two.
And remember, the best investment you can make is in yourself.
Right, on that note, time to sign off. But before we do, let's circle back to something we talked about earlier, all the attention that stablecoins are getting from regulators. It's a big deal, and it's only going to get bigger.
Yeah, stablecoins, especially the big ones like Tether, are a huge part of the crypto world. They make it easier for people to move money around and offer a bit of stability in a very volatile market.
Like a digital dollar that's always worth $1.
Right.
But it's not without its risks. Right.
Exactly. And that's what regulators are worried about. Money laundering, market manipulation, even the stability of the whole financial system. The challenge is finding that balance between supporting innovation and keeping things safe.
Tough questions and no easy answers. But regulation is coming. I think that's inevitable. It's happened with every new type of asset, and crypto is no exception.
I agree. The key is to have smart regulation, rules that encourage responsible innovation while protecting everyone involved. And that takes cooperation and a willingness to learn from both sides.
So true. And that's why these deep dives are so important. We get to explore these complex topics, hear different viewpoints, and hopefully understand the bigger picture a bit better.
It's all about connecting the dots, seeing the trends, and trying to figure out what's next. And who knows, maybe we'll even find some hidden opportunities along the way.
Or maybe a few warning signs. But that's the fun of it all, right?
Yeah.
It's a constant learning experience.
Couldn't agree more. The best traders are the ones who are always learning, adapting, and evolving.
Words of wisdom to end on. Well, folks, we've reached the end of our deep dive. We hope you enjoy the ride.
And remember, stay curious, stay informed, and stay ahead of the game.
Until next time, happy trading.